So for 2021, if your modified adjusted gross income is under $198,000 and the spouse that you're contributing for didn't have access to a company retirement plan during the year, then you can make the full $6,000 or $7,000 contribution and you can fully deduct that.
Are you ready for a successful retirement? We're addressing the topics facing today's retirees. Welcome to Retire with Ryan. Now here's your host, Ryan Morrissey.
Welcome back. This is episode number 90. This week we're going to talk about 2 ways to benefit from a spousal IRA. And I apologize, I'm getting over a cold, so my voice is not as strong as it normally is, so appreciate you bearing with me here. And if you're someone like me who takes longer to file their tax return and you haven't yet filed your tax return for 2021, you could still take advantage possibly of a benefit of what's known as a spousal IRA. And if you already have filed, that's okay, because this is something that you could also utilize as another savings option for 2022. So with an IRA, as you probably know, normally you have to have earned income in any given year to make a contribution. And what earned income is that's either income you earn from self-employment or income that you earn from working from someone else. Unfortunately, income from Social Security, pensions, dividends, investment income, that doesn't count as earned income. So you'd have to have earned income to normally qualify. And in a situation where you have one spouse who doesn't have earned income in 1 year, but you do, then you'd be eligible to potentially make what's known as a spousal IRA contribution for your spouse. If you're single, unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to benefit from this. You'd still need to have earned income. But if you're married, one spouse has earned income, you could possibly make an IRA contribution for the other spouse. And sometimes people can be confused and think that these are accounts that are jointly owned. These are still separate IRAs. The IRS requires that you always have your own IRA. The reason that they do that is because once you get older and you either reach age 59 and a half, where now you can take money out without penalty, or you make it to age 72, where now the IRS forces you to take money out a certain percentage each year called the required minimum distribution. They want to be able to track that. So that's why everyone is going to have their own IRA. The only way you could ever consolidate your IRA with your spouse's would be for your spouse to pass away. At that point, if it made sense, you could consolidate those accounts down to one. So prior to that, you're each having your own IRA. And if you find yourself in a situation where one spouse, let's say, is out of the workforce or is taking a year off from work or taking care of the children, then you could make a contribution on behalf of your other spouse as long as you have earned income. So for 2021, the maximum contribution is $6,000 if you're under 50, and there's an additional $1,000 catch-up if you're over 50. That has been the contribution limit for a few years. That will be the same contribution limit for 2022. The deadline you have to be aware of is that if you're making contributions for 2021, you still have time to do that up until the tax filing deadline, which is April 15th this year. If you've already filed your tax return and you're making a contribution for 2021, be aware that you need to amend your tax return to reflect this contribution. Or you want to make sure you make the contribution and note it on your tax return before you file your 2021 return. So let's just go through an example here of how this would work. We'll have a hypothetical couple, Rick and Kelly, and let's just say they're both 40 and Rick is working full-time, but Kelly has taken some time off to take care of their children. So Kelly doesn't have any earned income for 2021. Let's just say that Rick's earned income for 2021 was $100,000. If he wanted to, he could make a contribution into Kelly's IRA on her behalf, up to $6,000 because she's under 50. And if he qualified, he can make the same contribution into his IRA as well, giving them a total IRA contribution for 2021 of $12,000. Pretty straightforward. They do have choices, however, as to where they contribute that money. You currently can split up your contribution between either the traditional IRA or the Roth IRA. And it's really for you to decide what you think might be better for you as far as, do you need a deduction now, or would you be better off paying tax on the money and having it go into the Roth IRA side? With the Roth IRA, when the money comes out, it's tax-free, but you don't receive a deduction when the money goes in. With the traditional IRA, when the money goes in, you do receive a deduction, but when the money comes out, it's taxable. So it's really based on how long you'll be using this money and what your tax situation is, what you could benefit from. But you do have the choice of both of those with the spousal IRA. So if they were in need of a tax deduction, maybe that would help them reduce their taxable income into a lower tax bracket, maybe qualify for a special tax credit that they wouldn't normally receive, then they could choose to use the spousal IRA. Now there is, with both of these, whether you're choosing the spousal IRA or the Roth IRA, there is an income limitation as far as how much income you could earn, what's known as your modified adjusted gross income for 2021 or 2022, and be able to either deduct this amount on your taxes. So we'll focus on 2021 first. So for 2021, if your modified adjusted gross income is under $198,000 and the spouse that you're contributing for didn't have access to a company retirement plan during the year, then you can make the full $6,000 or $7,000 contribution and you can fully deduct that. Now, when I said earlier, had access to a company retirement plan during the year, let's just say that the spouse who's currently not working was working part-time at the beginning of the year and they were covered by a retirement plan through their employer, whether that be a 401k, a 403b plan, a profit-sharing plan, then they would be subject to a different adjusted gross income limit. So in that case, when it's a married couple and both are covered by a retirement plan, to be able to make a deductible spousal IRA contribution, your adjusted gross income for 2021 would have to be under $105,000 to make the full contribution and deduct it. And then it starts getting phased out proportionally up to $125,000. And then over $125,000, it's no longer deductible. And that number goes up slightly for 2022. It goes up to $109,000. So under $109,000, fully deductible. Up to $129,000, then it's phased out. Over $129,000, it's zero. And then if you file married filing separately, if your income is over $10,000, the deduction is completely phased out. And if it's between $10,000 and $0 of income, then taxable income, that is, then it's proportionally phased out. So you have to be aware of that anytime you're making a spousal IRA contribution. But if it isn't, if you're not covered by a plan, then you have a much greater amount of earned income that you could have to be able to make that spousal contribution and take a tax deduction on it. Now, the alternative is that you could just make that contribution to a Roth IRA where you're not receiving a deduction, as I mentioned, and that higher modified adjusted gross income limit is what would apply. So again, for 2021, you want to make a spousal IRA contribution to a Roth IRA for your spouse. If your adjusted gross income is under $198,000, you can make the full contribution. It gets proportionally phased out up to $208,000, then over $208,000, it's phased out. And for 2022, modified adjusted gross income under $204,000, you can make the full $6,000 or $7,000 contribution. Starts getting proportionally reduced up to $214,000, and then over $214,000, it's phased out. Now, you also have the ability to split the money. Let's just say you wanted to take a part deduction. Maybe you wanted to deduct half of your contribution. So you could put $3,000 into the traditional IRA and make a spousal contribution and take a tax deduction on that, and then maybe put the other $3,000 into the spousal Roth IRA where that's not tax deductible. You can split that money however you want, and that's really where your accountant can be helpful looking at your tax brackets and figuring out what tax deduction could be best for you. Now, let's say you're in a situation where your modified adjusted gross income is over those upper thresholds I mentioned before. For 2021, over $208,000, or for 2022, you believe your income's going to be over $214,000, your modified adjusted gross income. In that case, you should familiarize yourself with what's known as a backdoor Roth IRA. I mentioned that a few episodes ago in episode 67, talking about the elimination of the backdoor Roth IRA. That's a way that you can make a IRA contribution for your spouse into a Roth IRA, and You're not getting a deduction on that, remember, but you could do that even if your income is over those thresholds. That's something that still exists. There's talk about that going away. As I mentioned in this other episode, that's something that could be eliminated even this year. But if it's not eliminated, it's a way that you can get some money into a Roth IRA and, allow your money to grow tax-free into the future. So go back and listen to that episode. I'll put a link in the show notes. If you go to Retire with Ryan, you can find this episode there. This is episode 90. So right on there, you can find the links, and I'll put a link to that past episode 67. I sometimes get asked, where should I open these accounts? Where's the best place? Obviously, if we're working together, we can help you do that. We use TD Ameritrade. That's who TD Ameritrade Institutional is the primary custodian we use, but we also have ability to use Charles Schwab, and those are both good options for you if you're looking to do it on your own. You could also go direct to them as well. Fidelity is fine. Also, probably those three would be your best options because they're pretty easy to open there. They're going to give you a good selection of investment choices, and you can build a well-diversified portfolio. So I hope this episode was helpful on the spousal IRA and how this could help you to put some more money away from retirement and also qualify for a tax deduction even if only one spouse has earned income in 1 year. As a reminder, I still have some openings in my retirement readiness workshop. There's still time to sign up for that. Also, if you go to retirewithryan.com and you click on retirement workshops, you can find out more information about that. Have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you next Wednesday. Take care.
You should consult a financial advisor familiar with your specific circumstances before you make any financial decisions. Nothing in this broadcast constitutes a solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. Any mention of rates of return are historical or hypothetical in nature and are not a guarantee of future returns. Ryan Morrissey, CFP, is an investment advisor representative of Morrissey Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor.